Okay, hi. So today I'm going to talk about all the books that I did not finish in 2023. I DNF a lot of books. If I'm not feeling it, I'm just not going to read it. But there's like a difference between like a DNF where it's like, yeah, I don't plan to come back to this book, and a book where I'm like, well, it just like I wasn't feeling it now. I'm going to talk about first books that I'm considering like on pause, like I might not come back to them, but like there's a chance I will. And some of them are on the more popular side, so we'll go through those first, and then we'll go through the ones that I actually do not plan to continue at all. Okay, the first one is Screwball Television Critical Perspective on Gilmore Girls. So this I just read the intro, and it's a bunch of essays about Gilmore Girls, and I never continued on. I had other books that I was prioritizing instead. But I feel like it makes more sense to read this on like a Gilmore Girls rewatch, so I could read it as I'm watching. So I have no idea when I'll get back to this, but it's not like a true DNF. The next one, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. So I got quite a bit of the way into this book. It is a chunky book. I picked it up because I liked Piranesi by this author so much, which was very different in that it was short and succinct. And this is not. So it is thick. I got to here. So about maybe like a little less than a third of the way into the book, and I honestly was just like bored. I think that I had picked it up too close to Babel, which is similar adjacent premise where it's Victorian times and there's magic in the world and it takes place in England. But Babel I found really interesting in like the thematic content. It had a lot of like critique on colonialism and race and language and the utilization of language, and this just felt like it fell so flat in comparison to the themes that were explored in Babel, while being like an adjacent type of story. So I put this down. It's a huge book to invest in. My copy is like 845 pages, and I got 240 in. So I got a pretty big chunk of the way in. Usually I'll just like take a DNF, but it's so beloved that I'm like, maybe I'll come back to it. The next one, They Were Her Property, White Women as Slave Owners in the American South by Stephanie Jones Rogers. My copy of the audiobook through the library got returned, and I never requested it back out. And I really have not read much nonfiction this year, so it was more just about that. I really liked the actual book itself and what information was being translated in the book. I guess a timing thing. This one I got barely into, Familiar Things by Hwang, Sok-yong. I picked it up, I put it down. They live on the edges of town in like a trash like dump, kind of, and then they scavenge for things in that. That's all I remember. I don't know if it has like an environmentalism critique, but that's kind of where I envision it going, but just wasn't the right time, put it down. Okay, very popular one. Kindred by Octavia Butler. I got about a third of the way into this book. People like to describe it as like science fiction, which feels a little misleading, but it's about a woman, and she kind of, she lives in modern times, and she's a Black woman with a white husband, and she keeps being like sucked back into time, at a time and a place in American history where slavery is alive and well. And she keeps coming back to this young boy as he grows up. And I really don't know what about it I wasn't enjoying. It just kind of refused to keep my interest. Like, is it worth it? Does like it come together in such a way where it's like really a payoff? Or am I, because I'm not connecting to the characters, because I'm not connecting to like the the relationship between her and her white husband. Like, am I going to end up liking it, or is it just going to be a meh read? I don't know. That's a question I hope you can help me answer to see if I would actually come back to this or not. I was kind of on a Greek retell kick, and I picked up Herc by Phoenicia Rogerson, and this is a story that's told from a lot of voices, so it's trying to tell the story of Hercules. It's being told by a bunch of different people who have encountered him, and that type of storytelling can work for me. It worked for me in 1,000 Ships, where it's a lot of people telling this collective story, I guess, if you will. It wasn't really working for me here. This is probably actually a true DNF now that I think about it. Like, I don't think of all of the retellings, I don't think I would come back to this. I also thought it was going to be I don't know why, a feminist mythological retelling, and it hasn't really felt that way yet. I guess that one's actually a DNF. Let's get into the DNF list now. These ones, you truly can't convince me to come back to. These two I DNF'd at the end of 2022. I think I filmed this earlier in the year last year. The first one is Nettle and Bone by T.Kingfisher. I got a third of the way into this book. I remember vague ideas, notions about this novel. It's a fantasy. There's a betrothal marriage. There's an abusive husband. Their sisters and the kingdom may be falling apart, and then there's a lot of walking. And I was just so bored and did not care about the narrative at all. So that one was just, we didn't vibe. This one was also the end of 2022, and this is Ghostwritten by David Mitchell. When I first came back to reading in my early 20s, when I graduated from college and had a lot more time on my hands, I read Cloud Atlas, and I loved Cloud Atlas so much. And then I have read basically all his other works. I wanted to be a completionist with his collection, which is not super big. And as the more I've read, the less I've liked them. And I don't know if that is a matter of me reading more literature and feeling like the storytelling that David Mitchell achieves is not special, or as special as I thought, or if it's my changing tastes, or what. Or I'm also going back in time into his older books. So this Ghostwritten was his debut. And he loves to write connected short stories. And then you gotta just trust that it's all gonna come together. The problem that I felt with this collection is that I didn't care about any of the characters, and I don't mind an unlikable character. I actually quite like them sometimes. And maybe this is my distinction, is that when a character is truly heinous, I like there to be, or morally gray, honestly, I like there to be a reason, and I want that conveyed in some capacity. I guess I like it to be conveyed in the thematic content, and I'm thinking about this because I'm going to be doing or filming my 2023 favorite books this soon, and I want to do a superlative of my favorite character. And my favorite character that I've read all year is heinous, a heinous character. But I love them for the thematic content and how the thematic content is streamed through this character and their motivations. I just don't like a nasty, misogynistic, racist, homophobic character, just to be, I don't know, edgy. It kind of reminds me in a way of edgy comedians. We can think of one that's getting canceled right now, who just make shitty jokes just to make them. And it's like, you can be clever with that. Like, you don't have to just be like hitting women, am I right? But that's like the vibe I get from a lot of these characters, is just like, they were just like nasty, and I'm just like, where are we going with this? So that was a DNF. And I went on a long tangent, and I only have number 9 Dream left by David Mitchell, and I'm like, I own it, so I'm going to attempt it, but I have a feeling it's also going to be a DNF. And it's kind of depressing when you go into a reading experience, like wanting to read someone's whole backlist, because I rarely do that. And then I did it with him, and it was just like this slow decline down. And I DNF'd that at 41%. Okay, next one is Therese and Isabelle by Violette Leduc. I DNF'd this at 20%. It is translated from the French, and it is known as a lesbian French classic. It's about two teenage girls, named in the title, starting some sort of love affair. But they're teenagers, and it is graphic. And that's the first thing that turned me off. There's just honestly something kind of icky about that. So that was my first. And then the writing is like very, what is the word I'm looking for? There's a name for it. When you're like in the flow of someone's thoughts. I can't think of it, but it's like that.
It's stream of consciousness. That's what I was looking for here.
I wasn't a huge fan of that, so 2 reasons. I wanted to read it because it's a lesbian classic, and sometimes I do like to read books, not just because I think I'm going to like them, but for the whole historic element of it and how it fits into like the greater meta of like specific subgenres. But this one, it was a no. Okay, next one, Manhunt by Gretchen Felker-Martin. This I DNF'd very early. I DNF'd it at 7%. It is a dystopian novel by a trans author featuring trans characters. It's very graphic, like violently graphic from what I remember. I was trying to listen to it on audio, and I really didn't like their narration, and something about the writing style wasn't working for me either, although that could have been just the narrator not working for me. I can never tell, but I could tell very quickly it wasn't really a book that was going to work with it for me. I picked it up because one of my coworkers told me they liked it, and then Kevy has really raved about it, so I wanted to give it a chance, but it just was not the book for me. Okay, next one is The Dragon Behind the Glass by Emily Voigt. So this is a nonfiction, and I'll read you the actual subtitle. A true story of power, obsession, and the world's most coveted fish. Now that sounds quite interesting. It is about a type of fish that is kind of rarely found in the wild at this point, but is very expensive to purchase. The trade, there's a big black market trade for it. Just by the subtitle, it sounds super interesting. And this was the most boring book and the most boring way you could tell me about this subject. It is the type of journalist novel that I like the least, and that is for 2 reasons. One, the narrator, the putting themselves into the narrative too much. I don't care about you. I didn't come to this book to read about you. I came to the book to read about the subject matter. Putting yourself into it a little bit is fine, but not how it was done. And number 2 is how it was done. And that is that instead of taking all of her information about this fish and all of her research and compiling it into a format that would have made sense, she instead just brought us on her journey. And so a journey is never linear. So this book was not told in a linear fashion. So we were just kind of following her here and then following her there, and then something would happen here and she'd miss a flight, and then we have to go here, and then someone would tell her, maybe you have to go to this place, and then she would go to that place and nothing would happen. Your experience obtaining the knowledge does not make the knowledge interesting. So it was honestly just too focused on the author. I DNF'd it at 20%. I just like remember continuously trying to get through this and being like, this really can't be this boring. Like, there has to be a moment where this gets interesting. And then I read a bunch of 2 and 3 star reviews, and people were like, no, it never gets interesting. So DNF. Okay. I'm laughing because I think this one's kind of funny. So it is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is the first in her trilogy. I can't think of the name right now. Daevabad trilogy? Yeah. Okay, I'm laughing because in 2021, I made my favorites of the year list. And in that, I gave a backhanded compliment. And we'll see if I can clip it in. My DNF that I'm most likely to resurrect. But the one I'm going to choose for this, and I think it's because it's a trilogy, and I gave it like maybe 20 to 30% into the first book, and there's a lot of hype around it, and that is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. But I could probably be convinced to give it a second chance. My prophecy came true, and I was convinced to read this book again. And I think that it has so much hype, but I think that what finally convinced me to try the book again was Dia's review of it on her channel in a series wrap-up that she was doing. But I DNF'd it again. At first, I thought, okay, well, maybe it was me at the time while I was reading it. Maybe it was circumstantial why I DNF'd it the first time. I was reading it out loud to my partner. Maybe it was that. Maybe I could try it on audio, whatever. Nope. Nope. All of my problems from my original read were still present. I only got a little bit more in. I got to the 42% mark, and it just wasn't working for me. The characters would just get introduced too quickly, and things were just a little too happenstance. The narrative line felt too linear and too easily placed by the author. I didn't really like the protagonist and her, like, I'm not like other girls thing that I felt like she had going on. So I DNF'd it again, and I ended up reading The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi this year, which is S.A. Chakraborty's newest book, and a lot of the issues that I had with City of Brass have been resolved. Like, it was a lot about plotting and pacing and character work, and I felt that all of that has been, she's developed as a writer, and I really liked The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, so I still see that as like a win because I was still willing to give her another chance because I felt that there was potential. Hunting by Stars by Cherie Dimaline. I DNF'd this at the 44% mark. This is the second book in, what is the name of the series? The first one is The Marrow Hunters, The Marrow Thieves. I really liked The Marrow Thieves. It's a YA dystopian where Indigenous people can still dream and other people can't. And you're following a group of Indigenous people who are on the run. And then you go into the second book, and you now have two perspectives. You have your original perspective, and then you have a secondary perspective of a character that was in the first book. And pacing-wise, I just wasn't as interested in the dual perspective. There's a romance trope that I don't like that started getting used in it, and I thought I would like where the book was going, but overall, I just let it go and decided that I liked it enough as a standalone, and I didn't need to keep trying to force myself through the second book. Okay, and those were all the books that I DNF'd in 2023. I love a good DNF, so let me know which books you have DNF'd recently, and that is all I got for this video, so until next time, happy reading!